Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this. It's been a while, but we are back for episode 7 of Rovers Rambles. Hello again, Jaimie. Long time no see.
Yeah, hello again. It has been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. We've been waiting for sufficient news to come out of Rovers. Of course, everything's slowed down over the last couple of weeks, what with it being the off season, but we feel like we've got enough now that we can finally get a good conversation going. So we're going to be talking about the transfers that have been coming out. Of course, we've had a few confirmed now that we've already talked about, but we knew with the rumors, and a few more rumors that they're Bristol Live and stuff. So when you see those rumors, you know that they're gonna happen. We're also going to talk about the kit, of course, that whole debacle with it being leaked and everything, and then being announced properly the next day. And then we've got one more friendly that I think was announced yesterday, was it not? That we will touch on. And then, of course, it's the World Cup season. England kicking off tomorrow, and we'll talk a little bit about the two Rovers play, well, ex-Rovers players, I should say. Let's not get that far ahead of ourselves. That will be playing at the World Cup with England. So let's get straight on to our first topic of conversation. Of course, the transfers, both the confirmed players and the rumours. Of course, the rumours pretty much confirmed, like I said, when they come from Bristol Live. We'll just touch first on the confirmed transfers. We've already talked about them, I think, on the last episode or the episode before, so we won't stay on for too long. But it's confirmed now: Richie Smallwood and Kofi Balmer at Bristol Rovers once again. Of course, incredible loan spells, second half of last season, and now they're here to stay. Thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. I think I saw kind of one or two like slight little worries around Kofi Balmer because I think there was some reported interest in him elsewhere about would we get him back. But I think we all realistically knew that if those two were going to move on, they were going to come back here, provided that we
Mm,
wanted them because of
yeah.
the effect that they had, because of the relationship they built, because of just how perfectly everything seemed to work out with the both of them when they were here. It was just a perfect sort of collaboration, really. It's worked out like absolutely perfectly, considering there were doubts over the two of them when they first came in on loan. To see just kind of how everything has gone exactly to plan, it's just like such a positive to have them back with us for another year as we push on.
Yeah, absolutely. You were saying it's a no-brainer. The impact that they've both had has been absolutely immense. And obviously, you were saying there were a few worries as to whether we would get them. But I think Balmer, I think we all knew that as long as we put an offer on the table, he would come. I think it was Smallwood I was slightly worried about with what his family, being a northerner as well. And I was worried he might potentially decide to stay up north. But I think that he's moved the family down south now, hasn't he? He's committed
Mhm.
to Rovers. Obviously, I know it's only a year deal, but I think he enjoys the area from what I can tell, and I think that's probably what convinced him to move. Also, probably as well working with Steve. I know he's had a history with Steve. I think was he with Rotherham? I think we can't quite remember exactly who it was with,
Yes,
but I
I
know
believe
he's
so.
worked with Steve before, so I think that was a big factor in it.
Yeah, no, massively. I mean, Steve, there's definitely been, we're going to kind of get back to this with somebody else that we've signed, but Steve Evans clearly has kind of he he values familiarity. Players he's worked with before, players he's looked at before. He has kind of like a bank in his head of the players that he knows he can rely on.
Yeah.
And clearly, he fits the bill in that sense. And we've seen just how well that's worked out over last season since he came in. Everything's just been like a perfect fit because of that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And now it's just for both players about keeping on that form from last season. Of course, both absolutely immense, as we've mentioned in the conversation, despite only playing half a season, both of them for player of the season was their impact for Rovers.
Yeah, I
And
think
now
I
it's
I
just
gave I gave my player of the season to Barmer, didn't I?
yeah, I think you did. Yeah, and I was trying to be fancy and say Cavan or because he played well in the first half of the season, but
No,
um,
it's a fair shout.
they were definitely, if you look at that second half of the season in isolation, they were, a cut above, I would say, everyone else, Balmer and Smallwood. And that's no disrespect to the rest of the players. Of course, it was incredible. They all played amazingly, but if the best players were A tier, they were the two S tiers in my opinion. If we're doing tier lists.
Yeah. No, yeah, I can agree with that. There were definitely standouts elsewhere, I think. Like you look at Brad Young, Tommy Lee, Shaq Ford, but
Mm,
it did seem like Barmer and Smallwood were kind of a step ahead of the rest almost.
yeah. I think it. Yeah, they offered a lot to the club as well. I think that was a big positive about them. Obviously, Balmer. I think he's a relatively unique type of centre back. Of course, he's got that work at the back, and he's very good at that. You get stuck in with a challenge. He's an incredible defender, but then he's also got that asset of the long throw, which we haven't ever had. And it's nice to see. Normally the amount of times you've been with me on the terrace where we've been like, oh my god, it's a long throw, like, and absolutely terrified. And now it's nice that we finally have someone where we can watch it and be like, oh, it's a long throw. Let's see what we can do with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's now gotten to the point where I've started celebrating throw-ins, which I think that's kind of shown how far we've come because I used to dread them.
Yeah,
Especially coming against us, the amount of time it was near enough every week we'd come against someone with a long throw, and we'd point it out literally every single time. So the fact that we've now got that weapon, and I mean, he clearly has those capabilities. I mean, when he first came in, he was playing primarily as a right back for those
yeah,
like first few games he played for us. So he's clearly got the capabilities in more of a technical sense. But it kind of astounds me now looking back at how his defensive work was kind of what was criticised from the Motherwell fans. And I guess that is just like perfect proof of kind of how different viewpoints can show different things. The fact that that was kind of almost a unanimous opinion from their side, and it's been a polar opposite of what we've seen.
yeah. And I think you were talking about obviously conflicting viewpoints within football. I think the Tranmere fans would have a word or two to say
Sure.
about Smallwood, and obviously he's completely proved them wrong. Um, I would like to know what actually went wrong at Tranmere in the first half of the season, because I just can't understand how, you know, with how well he played for us, the quality he bring. Obviously, he was an engine in that middle of the park. He could pick out a great pass. He dictated the play as well. All the three things you really want in a deep lying midfielder, and how Tranmere fans just couldn't see that in him, or what he was giving for Tranmere that meant that they thought he was terrible, is beyond me. Because obviously, from what we've seen, he's been a revelation.
Yeah, I mean, you have to assume it was some kind of misprofiling, I'm assuming, because it feels like he's got a very almost simplistic role, which has kind of highlighted his strength so much for us. We brought him in to do like one very specific job that he's doing very well. I'm assuming they were kind of pushing him outside of that. It's almost like, I guess you could say, Camille Conte for us. It's very likely that he can go elsewhere and likely play very well elsewhere, but didn't work out necessarily for us because I think we were almost banking on him doing something that he wasn't equipped to do. And if he can find another team that will be able to kind of push his strengths and hide his weaknesses a bit more, which is almost what we've done with Smallwoods, I think it will kind of just excel him. So I'm guessing Tranmere were maybe a little bit over reliant on him to do a little bit more than what we wanted. We brought him in to kind of be like the man who's going to steady the ship whilst we can have the others around him doing the work. Maybe they were wanting him to be a part of that as well, that he wasn't necessarily equipped to be.
Yeah, and I think as well, also, um, obviously having worked with Steve before, he knows his strengths, and I think that's why he was probably able to play Smallwood to his strengths. Obviously, going to Tranmere, I believe Andy Crosby was their manager at the time. I don't think they'd ever worked together. Obviously, you can misprofile a player like you, and then you don't play them to those strengths, and it might not work out. Obviously, some players are a bit more adaptable, and they can play in a role that's slightly unfamiliar to them and still do well. But I think Smallwood is a very, obviously he's good in that role, I'm not saying, but I think he's a very specific player, as in, if you play him in his role, he will do well, but then he can't really cope with anything outside of that. And that's probably what Tranmere did. But now that we've obviously with Steve being, having worked with him, identifying his role, he's played him to that and has been a sensation.
Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of play him to his physical limits. I mean, he's getting on. He's not exactly the quickest player in the world. He is going to be naturally slightly limited on what he can do, but that is something that you can very easily work around. It's something we've done before with someone like Paul Coots, who we've seen that comparison drawn so much. That is, it's all about just kind of how you can platform these type of players, because when you can get the best out of them, they're such assets, especially at this level. They're almost
Mhm.
like necessities. You see so many teams that do well at this level having a player like Smallwood, an experienced head who can just be like I don't know what to call it, almost a mediator in the middle who's just kind of keeping everything under his control. But again, you don't want to kind of push the boat out too much on that.
Yeah, I think mediator is a good way to describe Smallwood. I think you need that balance, don't you? You need that player who can, get in that midfield battle, pick off a pass, control the tempo, get stuck in, and then you've got those players further forward that can play off of him. And obviously, we know how important the midfield battle is in football these days. So if you can, find that right balance, which I think Smallwood is a big part of, it'll help massively in that midfield battle. And obviously, a good promotion team needs a midfield these days. It's not in the previous years and decades where you could probably have a good defense and attack and play route one and get away with it. You need a midfield now, and I think Smallwood will be a big piece in that puzzle.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. It wasn't exactly like we weren't exactly a miss for technical quality last season. Towards the end of the season, it wasn't like we needed him desperately to do more. When you have players like Yusuf Akamrich there, we were going to have the ability going forward. We needed him for one very specific purpose, which was kind of how disorganized we were at times in that
Oh
midfield
yeah,
and how easily we could get ran through at times, which is exactly what he's done.
yeah. I think just a bit of calm in that midfield as well, because I did notice that sometimes last season that when we started to lose the midfield battle, it just seemed a bit, panicked and rushed at times. And obviously, Smallwood, he's experienced, he's calm, and I think that is probably a big reason why we actually went on that unbeaten run, that winning run as well for so long. And obviously, in games where we came from behind, is just that calming presence. Not just Smallwood, but he was a big part of it. And I think that's what we lacked in the first half of the season, was just someone to steady the ship when things were going wrong. And you bring people like that in, Smallwood, and I think it does make a difference.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's almost I feel like there's because of the experience. I feel like almost Darrell Clark, when he made his summer signings, might have seen Josh McEachran as a kind of player like that, who we can see from evidence is not a player like that at all. He's almost very, very rash. Is kind of
Yeah.
what we noticed for him. Particularly Tranmere away sticks out when he came on then, and it felt like every single touch he's taken was either a long ball or he was flying into a tackle on someone. It was just a completely different profile, and I feel like that's almost somewhere we got it wrong again in the summer. Was we were just completely missing that profile and almost just assumed we'd be able to get it elsewhere, which we couldn't, rather than directly addressing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think obviously you were saying McEachran, he was rash, wasn't he, at times? And I'd probably agree with you that Darrell probably saw him as that sort of calming presence, and we got it terribly wrong. And I think that's why we needed someone like Smallwood in January, just to get that midfield under control. And he's done a fantastic job, and I can't wait to see him back in the quarters.
Yeah, no, I cannot wait at all. I'm very,
Yeah.
very happy because I'll be honest, I was starting to venture towards the side of not seeing it happening before it was kind of leaked. So yeah, very happy.
Yeah. Fair enough. I was hopeful. I wasn't sure 100% if it was happening because of obviously the family ties, and there was interest from teams like York and Rochdale, wasn't there? I think the newly promoted sides were
Mhm.
interested in him, so I thought he might favour that because of the family. But obviously, it's happened now that he's back with us, and I'm very happy with it. One more player who is back with it, well, not back with us, sorry. One more player who has signed with us. He's not a returning loanee. I should set the record straight in that, because I've already done this in. Is Ben Purrington, left back, I believe. Well, I hope he is,
Yes.
because yeah, he is. I thought so. I'm just having a bit of a mare here. Um, 30 years old, from Cambridge United. From what I've seen, relatively decent signing. He's made quite a few appearances for Cambridge last season. He's played a few games in the Championship as well. I can't quite remember for who, but he's got that Championship experience, which is good. From what I've heard from Cambridge fans, he's not the most amazing defender, but he always has a baseline of around the 7 out of 10. And at the end of the day, that's decent. You take that.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's very much a steadying. We're keeping Jack Sparks on. It very much feels like Purrington is kind of the reliable second choice almost, who can provide a
Yeah.
bit of a push, but isn't going to be like this new massively dynamic fullback that's going to turn us into a different side, which isn't necessarily what we need at all. We need
No.
we need reliability. We've seen that with the player we've just spoke about, Richie Smallwood. You need players who have the experience, who have just the reliability factor, who can come in and be solid all of the time near enough, which I'm glad is something that we're seeming to kind of rely on a lot more now.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, you were saying about the reliability factor, which he seems like he has, and you don't want to you don't want to take risks sometimes.
Mhm.
Obviously, you want a good player, but you want a player who you know is going to be reliable week in, week out, and I think that's what we've got with him. Obviously, he's not going to completely come in and usurp Sparks straight away, and I think it's good because that's got the competition there. Obviously, he'll be hungry to prove himself to Steve, get those starts as much as he can, and then it will also push Jack on to bigger and better things. Obviously, he'll be looking over his shoulder now. Obviously, we've only had one left back, so he was thinking, oh, I'm nailed in on start. I can not necessarily. Obviously, I know he wouldn't. He's a professional footballer, but subconsciously you can think, well, I can drop a little bit because I don't have any competition. Whereas now he's got to be on it like every week, and I
Yeah.
think that's a good thing. From what I've heard as well, Purrington's a lot more defensively minded than Sparks.
Mhm.
Um, he doesn't push on as much, and I think it's good that we've got that balance. I'm not saying that I don't like Sparks pushing forwards because I think it can be an asset to the team sometimes, but I think it's good that we've got that balance and we've got versatility in that role. I think is a big thing. Especially with the tactical situations that can arise during a game, and we've seen what Steve can do with his tactical tweaks. And I think having two separate archetypes of player for the same position will allow us to, you know, make those switches if games are going against us. And I think that's a good reason and a big reason why I'm happy we've brought him in.
Yeah, no, that's a huge factor. We've been, particularly in this winning run towards the second half of the season, we've been very reactive at times. We see something happen and we will directly address it, which is almost, it had been a bit of an issue beforehand where we kind of
Yeah,
just like, you just keep throwing keep throwing it at a wall until it sticks. Um, but yeah, I do like the fact that we've got almost two like completely opposite profiles on that side now, where we can kind of address what we need to address, attack a game how we need to attack a game, rather than being limited in a sense to this one like very specific way of going about things. And what I wanted to mention as well, I mentioned this earlier about how Steve Evans kind of has like this bank of players in his head, the reliability factor, people that he knows. He's never worked with Purrington before, but it has been said that apparently while he was at Stevenage, he tried to sign him twice on two separate
right.
occasions. So again, he has this kind of build up of players that he's familiar with, and it seems like again that's kind of what he's going back to. Because I know this was mentioned around, was it Cavani said he also looked at him elsewhere.
Yeah, I can't quite remember if he said anything about Cavan. I know he said he tried to sign a Camrich for Rotherham. He must have looked at every player on the planet, the amount of players he's tried to sign in the past.
No, sorry,
But
it wasn't Cavani. It would have been Right, because obviously Cavani came in under Darrell. I think it was Right, because he said he looked at
yeah, I
before.
think you are right, actually. Yeah. Um, One of the about 50 million players that he's looked at in the past.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's good that obviously he's not worked with Steve before, but if Steve has had interest in him, then he knows that he's probably. And Steve doesn't do anything without conviction. If he thinks that a player won't add anything to Rovers, he won't go after him.
Yeah.
So I think if Steve has the confidence and the knowledge that Purrington will make the club better, then you've got to trust him.
Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, I think it seems like there's been a very clear switch in our, since Steve Evans has come in, our transfer strategy to just kind of go for the almost a simplistic, reliable kind of profile. And I'm glad that is something that we are sticking to.
Yeah. I think you got to go safe. Obviously, not too safe that it gets a bit boring and uninspiring, but you don't want to push out the boat too much and it backfire horribly. I think that's what we did a little bit last summer. I
Mhm.
think Steve can find the right balance often, and I think Purrington, from what I can see, obviously we haven't seen him play yet, so we need to not hatch our chickens too quickly. But he seems reliable. But he seems like a good player at the same time. So I think that's exactly a sort of Steve Evans signing.
Yeah. Well, one thing I do think is worth mentioning, as much as I'm never going to kind of write a signing off, just to kind of like ease the expectations a little bit, I've seen the narrative a little bit being pushed about that he's guaranteed to do well because he went up with Cambridge. I've seen this kind of like briefly mentioned that, oh, he's a player who was part of a promotion side from League Two. Obviously, he's going to be able to do that again. And my kind of thought process when I heard that was James Wilson.
Yeah, that is true. And obviously James Wilson was League One, so
Yeah,
even if you look on paper, even more impressive. And my goodness, was he a flop?
yeah,
Um, so
oh,
I get what you're saying. You can't look at things and expect them to come true all the time. But I mean, obviously we're pushing for promotion, so it is good to have that experience of promotion in there. Obviously, I know you say it doesn't work all the time, but if you look at it, with the goal that we've got in mind, I think you always want to have people who have that experience of going up in there because they know what it takes to get it done. Um, so we'll see whether, it backfires as horribly as Wilson did. I'm hoping it doesn't, and I don't think it will, but you never know sometimes.
yeah, we'll see. But no, I'm hopeful, definitely.
Yeah. Well, before we get on to our final transfer, we'll just touch quickly. I think this is going to be the quickest one on Kieran Kelly, because it seems like it's not really going anywhere at the moment. Obviously, Bristol Live have said it's going to happen. So, and normally when Bristol Live say something's going to happen, it happens. So you'd like to think it will still happen, but it just seems to have stalled a little bit recently.
Yeah, no, it is yeah, a little bit weird. I don't know if it's because like, I mean, we're obviously in that very very early stage of off season. Obviously, the two players that we brought in are people that we already were familiar with.
Yeah.
It might just be kind of a case of we're kind of just withholding it until a later date. But yeah, it does seem a little bit strange that it was like quite a few weeks ago now that it was so-called confirmed, and things have just seemingly gone a little bit quiet.
Yeah, I would like to think it is just the club, obviously, like you said, withholding it. Obviously, we've had three signings now confirmed, and but they did take quite a while to actually go through, like confirmed by the club. So I reckon it probably is one of those cases, but it is just interesting to bear in mind. Obviously, Bristol Live are quite a reliable source, but they're not infallible. They don't get everything right. So they could have had, one of their rare misses on this one. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, I said you do normally still trust them. We expect it to happen at some point. But we'll just have to keep an eye on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one that I do hope does go through because he seems like the kind of profile that would be a very natural fit for this side. And I
Yeah,
don't think it's anything we need to immediately panic about. But yeah, it's just a bit of an unusual one almost.
yeah. But we'll keep an eye on that and see how it goes. Finally, on our little transfer bit, we'll talk about something that I believe came out from Bristol Live yesterday. It was yesterday or the day before. Um, it will be our fifth, obviously, if Kelly goes through, signing of the summer. Bobby Quansah, the winger from Newport, of course, leaving Newport at the end of this season. I believe there were six clubs interested in him, which is pretty impressive. And we have managed to win the race for his signature. So Bobby Quansah is hopefully, if Bristol Live are right, going to be Rovers' fifth signing of the summer. And I'm pretty happy with this one.
Yeah, no, very happy. I mean, he really kicked into form towards the end of the season, scored a couple crucial goals, obviously in a completely different race to what we're looking to be in. But still, he was able to react to the big occasion for Newport and do what was needed of him. He's very much like he's a very direct, very exciting, very dynamic sort of winger slash number 10. And he's somebody that I think can be a really good fit. And it's also, again, a testament to kind of how attractive of a proposition we are at the moment that, like you said, there were six clubs interested in him. And it seemed like from the very beginning, we were almost the only option within that.
Yeah, that point is very true. It's nice to see that we're finally, when in the past when you see that we're in for someone, but there's multiple clubs involved, you think, well, that's probably not happening. And now every time we go in for a player, unless it's clubs that are like really, at the high end of League One or even in the Championship, you think we've still got a chance. And that's nice to see. Obviously, six clubs involved, so there was a lot of interest for him, and rightly so. I agree with everything you said about him. He's very direct. You know, um, maybe not, obviously not in the same quality, but I think he is a sort of a bit like an Cambridge archetype of player, just that willingness to run, that directness, getting the chances in and all that. Um, and I think I don't think he'll be the replacement for him, but I think he can work in those similar roles. And obviously, he didn't have the greatest of seasons at Newport. Obviously, we talk about his the form in the last couple of months. Obviously, it was a big reason why Newport stayed up, and he had a very good run then. But before that, it wasn't amazing. So I
Mm.
think the biggest problem with him, and I think he'll fix it this season. I think working with no disrespect to Newport, better players will probably help lift his game. But I think his biggest problem that we need to be wary of is inconsistency, I think.
Yeah, 100%. But like I said a second ago, I think kind of the thing that's exciting me the most about the signing is he has proved that he can react to the occasion. We're hopefully, if everything goes to plan, going to be in a situation where almost every point is crucial. And
Yeah,
as much as it was in a different sense, he had the exact same battle last season, just at the other end. And he
yeah.
was the one out of everyone in that Newport squad who reacted to that challenge. And I think that is something that will provide dividends if he can replicate that, which I'm hopeful that he will.
Yeah, I think he seems like that type of player that likes the challenge. Obviously, it's a very different situation, like you said, from what we want to be in next season, but it's a challenge nonetheless. And he was the one player within the Newport side who properly rose to the challenge. Of course, they all played their part. If they didn't, they wouldn't have stayed up. But you need that sort of player that can just drag things by the scruff of the neck, and you know, points, games, seasons are won on moments sometimes. And if he can be that player that can just step up in the crucial moment and win us points, win us games, then that's all you really want. And we've seen he can do it with Newport. I mean, I've seen some of the goals he scored in the last couple of games as well, and they were some good finishes. So
Yeah.
hopefully he can do the same for us. And I think, give him a season where he's working with better players. He's got more freedom to, I think, properly express himself. Obviously, with Newport, they did give him that freedom, but I think you're always restricted a little bit because of what you're fighting against. In a way, you sort of have to be a bit more constrained. But when you're fighting for promotion, in a weird way, the guardrails are off. Um, I don't
Mhm.
know what I'm trying. You kind of get what I'm trying to say here. I'm not
Yeah, no,
explaining it in the best way,
I get what you're
but
getting at. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I think something that will kind of almost work to his benefit is I think there's a difference between kind of fighting to be the superstar and almost being relied on to be the superstar. What I think he had at Newport was they were almost over reliant on him, particularly towards the end of the season. I think it will almost provide dividends that he can have that occasional off game, and hopefully it won't be the biggest issue in the world because of the
yeah.
quality we have elsewhere, and it will give him almost just that little bit of freedom, take a little bit of the weight off, and allow him to just excel.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. Obviously, at Newport, if he had a bad game, that was them, screwed because he was so important to them. And then if he comes into a system where obviously he's one of the key players, but he's got, quality around him, you can have those off games. And I think that is a very good sort of way to describe it. What you said, he's fighting to be a superstar here, not being relied on to be one. And I think that will, be positive for his game and for him as a player.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, yeah, just with that, he seems like the kind of player who will just excel off of having the freedom, which hopefully we can provide him.
Yeah, I think take that weight off of him of obviously, not single-handedly, but being a big part of dragging a team away from that, and give him the freedom. And I think he will be, a very good player. And I think he could kick on. I think obviously he had a good end to last season, and I think if he's got that freedom and he can keep that sort of going, I think he could have a very good season next season. Obviously, we'll have to see. He could, be as inconsistent as he is at Newport, but I think it's a good fit. I know, obviously, we would all say that, wouldn't we? We're Rovers fans, but I think, with the direction we're going, the manager we have, and also I think his role. I think we're not lacking in players who play that role, but obviously we're losing Yusuf, obviously, and I think it's good that we can get someone who, obviously Yusuf's so good quality, he's never going to be replaced one-on-one, it's good that we can get players in that are of that archetype.
Yeah, just someone that can provide that little bit of a spark almost. I feel like that can be so
Yeah,
kind of crucial. And also, this
yeah.
is kind of a little bit of a tangent. I know obviously it's a Rovers focused podcast, but Newport are not looking good next season.
No, no, no. I know they're losing everyone, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
the
they
amount
have
of
been
times I go on
ravaged.
Twitter and I see, oh, X player is leaving Newport, X player is leaving Newport. Yeah, they are in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they were lucky to stay up last season with how poor quality the rest of the league around them was. If they don't go down this year, then something's seriously wrong with League Two. Let's say that. Yeah. Anyway, that's our transfer bit. We've done quite well to get that to half an hour.
Yeah.
And now we'll move on to the kits. Now, this was interesting. Obviously, they were leaked at first, weren't they? I remember, I can't remember, was it you that sent me the link or was it
Yes, it
someone
was
else?
me that
Yeah,
sent
it
it through.
was.
Yeah.
I remember looking on Snapchat, the day before it was officially announced, and I see Rover's home kit in my Snapchat chat, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? Because I'd seen nothing on Twitter, and I thought, are they doing it on YouTube first? Like, this is a bit weird. And then you were like, oh, silly gits, they've leaked the kit.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how. I don't know if it's actually been said how, because obviously the video was unlisted, but somehow somebody's got hold of the link. I'm not sure if it's actually been said like who or how they got hold of it. But yeah, it spread like wildfire.
Yeah, that is weird. Now that you mention it, being an unlisted video, yet someone still managed to find the link. It is weird how that got out. Maybe it was intentional. I'm not saying I don't think it was, but could you imagine if it was intentional that they purposely leaked the kit to sort
It'd,
of
it'd
cause
be
a bit of.
smart to be fair. I got us
It
talking
would be
about it.
smart, yeah. The problem is if they did that strategy, no one would believe them. They'd just be like us. They're like, oh, silly idiots, leak the kit. Whereas they'd be like, well, actually, we were meaning to do that, but I mean, obviously, it got out somehow. Obviously, confirmed now that Puma are our manufacturers. 10 years from with Macron, and we've finally moved on. Um, I'm, sad and happy at the same time. Sad because I thought Macron's kit designs were quite good. I think we've had some pretty good kits over the last 10 years. But also, in the same regard, they weren't the best in terms of sizing. Um,
Yeah.
I've lost a lot of weight over the past year. If anyone who follows my TikTok will know, and obviously with my the run that I did, I've lost like 6 stone now. So I've gone down in kit sizes, but with Macron, I'm still a double XL. That's how bad their sizing is.
Yeah. I mean, it's less of an issue for me. I don't exactly struggle to fit into anything. I don't know if kind of my arm gives a bit of an indication. I am a very, very slim man.
Very underweight, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I still fit into my 17-18 kit from when I was 12 years old. I wish that was a joke. So that was less of an issue for me. So I was someone who liked Macron because kind of all that mattered to me was the designs. And I actually thought they did really, really well. The only one I ever really kind of didn't like in terms of our home kits, at least, was weirdly enough the one we got promoted in 21-22.
That one grew on me. I thought it was a bit weird at first. I think it didn't help as well that the filter on the camera, for whatever reason, made the color look really, light blue in the reveal. It
Yeah,
wasn't as it was a lot bluer in real life, which I think was good.
yeah. I mean, it's one of the few I never actually got, so I don't have my own one in person to kind of compare that
I've got it. It's upstairs somewhere. I'm not going to go and look for it, but
to. But no, yeah, I've always been a fan of the designs. I think we've had some good one over the years. I'm a fan of kind of a lot of the smaller details we've had. I know the one with the gasworks in the background was one I was a
yeah.
really big fan of.
I think my favorite one ever from Macron was the one with the map.
Yeah, no, again, that was another one I really, really liked.
Yeah, and also the away kit from that year, the sort of mint and black. Yeah, the
Yeah,
black with mint, sort of splodgings on it. It was that was really nice.
yeah, a lot of I've always thought our away kits were strong. The green and yellow is still a standout for me. The green and yellow quarters.
Yeah,
Um, the the black and yellow kit was one that I was a fan of until we kept using it for 6 years.
yeah.
And then it kind of got a bit old. But
I also quite like last year's, the one that was black with the sort of street art vibe in the design. That was
Yeah,
quite nice as well. Yeah, we've had some good away kits from Macron, but obviously now we're moving away from them onto Puma. So it's the first time I can really remember Rovers ever working with one of the major kit manufacturers. You'd say when you think major, you think Nike, Adidas, and Puma.
yeah.
Um, so that's interesting, and I must say I've seen the kit. I don't hate it. This is not me saying I despise the kit, but I think it's just quite plain this year.
I'm personally okay with that though. I'm quite a fan of kind of just like the almost completely stripped back style. I feel like if you're gonna, it's better to kind of go all in on it being plain rather than like add a tiny little bit of detail to the point where it kind of just looks a bit awkward.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I think Macron did it quite well in the case that they always kept the quarters, but the detail sort of, was woven into the kit in a way, in the sort of sense that it was pretty much in the fabric. Like obviously, with like if you think of this year with the badges being on the kit, in front of it, behind the quarters, it sort of felt like it was a core identity of the kit. I think that's the difference. You can you know, create kits with details that just sort of add to the kit and they look a bit funny. And I think I agree with you there that that just looks awkward and is not great. But I think with what Macron did well was they sort of made the details like a core design aspect of the kit and it blended in very well. So from a distance, it just looked like quarters, like any Rover shirt would and should. But then when you look at it up close, it's got a nice bit of detail to it, and I think that's what Puma could have done. Don't get me wrong, I'm not obviously. I'm glad they've gone with quarters.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Well, yeah.
because that's the one thing I didn't want is you mess with quarters. If you mess with quarters, then what is the point? So obviously, I'm not the biggest fan of this kit. It's plain, and I think we could have done a lot better. And that's one thing I've seen from fans of other clubs who've had Puma, is they do get a lot of complaints that their kits seem very plain and very templatey. And I can
Mhm.
kind of see where they're coming from now. I would like to see the away kit because that would maybe confirm my suspicions as to whether Puma are going to be a bit of a templatey job. But obviously it's quarters, and that's all you can ask for at the end of the day. It's essential to the identity of Rovers that you keep the quarters, and they've done that. So you know it's a Rovers kit. I can get behind it.
Yeah, I mean, you can. I'm almost taking it from the perspective of it's their first kit, so they went simplistic. 'Cause you don't want to take too much of a risk, almost, which is something that we're not really going to know until next season comes about. But
Yeah,
all in all, I'm personally quite a fan of it. I think it's very very clean, obviously very simplistic, but I think it does just kind of work quite well. The badge, I'm a big fan of. I'm a fan of having the embroidered badge
that
compared to what we
to be
dealt with for a
fair,
while.
yeah. That I will agree with. I'm very happy we've gone back to that because the thermally bonded badges could be a nightmare sometimes. To be fair, they held up quite well. I think it depends how you wash them really. If you wash them really hot, and also I think one thing that obviously it's not going to make a difference now because we've moved on from them, but one thing that I've learned over the years to sort of keep the badge from coming is to wash them inside out, turn them inside out, and then wash them, because that sort of keeps the badge inside and away from like the barrage of like the water and soap and everything. But
Yeah, I
obviously, an
bet.
embroidered badge it looks nicer, I would say, and also it's a lot easier to upkeep, which is nice. So I agree with that. I'm very happy they've brought Puma have brought an embroidered badge back to Rovers.
Yeah, I bet anyone who's listening to this now, I bet when they clicked on, they weren't expecting to get tips on how to use a washing machine.
Yeah,
But that's what you
I
get
know.
from the Rovers Rambles. Um,
You wouldn't miss it for the world.
no, not at all. One of a kind.
No.
But yeah, I think just almost as an aesthetic as well, as much as it's more practical, I think kind of having it almost looks a little bit almost messier, which I think actually helps it because I think it makes it stand out more. I think it makes it look a little bit more old school rather than looking so like refined. Which again I think almost fits the theme of the kit because it's very plain. It almost does feel like a bit of an older kit. It feels
Yeah.
like the kind of thing I can imagine in like the early 2000s rather than
Yeah.
now.
It feels a bit like when we had Aria before Macron. It sort of feels a little bit like those sort of era of kits, and that's not in a bad way. Aria did have some good kits, Yeah, it is plain, and I think I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. What you were saying, I think Puma might have gone a bit simple for the first season, and it sounds like I'm, the world's biggest hater of this kit. I'm not. I do. Wouldn't say I like it, as in like love it. I'd probably say if I had to rate it, it'd probably be about a 6.5 out of 10. It's
Yeah, okay.
good, but it's not amazing like we've had in the past.
Yeah, no, but I personally, I'd go higher than that. I think you can tell that from kind
Yeah.
of how I've spoken about it. But yeah, I think a big part of it depends on kind of where they go in the future to see if this is a one-off or if this is kind of how the trend's going to go.
Yeah, which we'll have to obviously see when we do Rovers Rambles episodes in 10 years' time. So that's it on the kit. Obviously, um, a big kit for Rovers. Obviously, our first with Puma, and also the whole debacle with leaking it was not ideal.
Mhm.
We're now going to move on to our final little section for today. Oh no, we're not, because we're going to talk first about one friendly that we've now got. Leicester at home. I
Yeah,
believe it's on the 14th of July, which will be interesting because I think that might also be the same day that England are playing in the semi-finals of the World Cup.
yeah, actually, yeah, I think it is. Yeah, possibly maybe.
So if we make it that far, that'd be interesting. But I was thinking, I saw it at first when it came through on the tweet. I was thinking it's an interesting friendly. I was quite happy with it, and then I realised, well, they've been relegated to League One, and my sort of enjoyment and excitement for it sort of sapped away a little bit. I was still, obviously, you think of, because they have been over the last like sort of decade, as a Premier League side and a good one at that, and then you realise the reality. Oh, they're in League One. It just makes it a little bit boring in a way.
Yeah, they're a club with so much like recent pedigree. They're FA Cup winners, they're Premier League winners, obviously. Sides that have had deep runs in Europe. So to kind of see them in the position they are is a little bit strange. I think we've the fact that kind of our friendlies in recent years, we've always tried to have one like championship side in there.
Yeah,
And Leicester, on the face of it feels like bigger than that. So the fact that it's actually smaller than that technically is a bit of a weird one. Kind of just sums up the way that that club has gone in recent years. Um, but no, it's something that I'm up for definitely as a game.
yeah. I think it'll be a good game. And obviously, um, I agree with you. It just Leicester as a whole feels weird right now. I think you
Mhm.
just obviously with the whole situation they've had over the past couple of years, when you think of Leicester, you think of at the very least a Premier League team. So for them to be in League One just does feel odd. But I think it will be a good game. Obviously at the Mem, which it's always nice that sort of. I don't know if we'll have any more games at the Mem, but if this is the only home game friendly at the Mem, then that first game at the Mem every season is always a nice occasion. So that'll be nice. And I think it will be a good test because obviously it's still a while away, but that is a sort of level that the owners want to reach. So it will be good, for our players to sort of, you know, take on someone like that, and we can see sort of what that level is and how far away we are from that level.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if you've actually seen this as well. Apparently, I remember seeing this somewhere. It might have been on kind of the official announcement of it. Apparently, it's 60-minute halves.
Yeah, so I saw that in the replies, and I clicked onto the actual article, thinking, right, well they've probably said that, and there was nothing in there. So
All right.
whether you know, whether someone knew that it was 60-minute halves from somewhere else, or whether the article said it was 60-minute halves and then changed it, I don't know.
I don't know
But
if maybe Leicester said it or something.
maybe,
I
yeah,
can I
that
can
could
very
be true
quickly
because
check. I know
I
it's
didn't check Leicester's.
not ideal. I'll
Yeah,
try and keep my phone off camera. Um,
uh,
yeah,
yeah,
keep going.
I didn't check, to be fair, Leicester's article, so you could be very much right. Um, but from the Rovers end of things, it didn't seem like there was any indication that it would be 60-minute halves. I've never really been a big fan of friendlies that are sort of extra time. I just think it can drag on a little bit, especially if you get it in every game where there's like a lull of like 5-10 minutes where the action's not as great. In friendlies, especially considering it's pre-season and the players aren't up to full fitness and all this, those lulls can last for like 20-25 minutes, especially if you play 60-minute half, because that's 120 minutes. That's basically playing a knockout game that goes all the way to penalties. Um, it's
Yeah.
it's it's not it yeah, it can get a bit boring, I think. Um, did you find out if Leicester had said
Yes,
anything?
it was Leicester that said it. Yeah,
Right.
it's in the first paragraph of their article.
So
So
it's 60-minute halves.
yeah, so it's almost
Yeah.
like I'm assuming we'll have two different teams. So I feel almost like a little bit of a double header.
Yeah, it probably will be, to be fair. I think that's the only way you can really make 60-minute halves enjoyable is if you play two different sides, and that's probably what we'll do. I think it's
Mm.
just a good opportunity for the players to get a run out. Obviously, they've got those friendlies away from home, but you want to get them in front of the fans at the Mem. Obviously, some will turn up for the away friendlies, and good on them, but not everyone wants to. And I think the Mem, you always got to have one friendly there every season. A good opportunity to get the players in front of the fans, get the new players in front of the fans as well. Obviously, you've got the old players that have played in front of the fans, but then you've got those signings that will be their first experience. Obviously, it's not the same, but you want to build up that relationship with the players, get the fitness into the legs, and also a good opportunity for the merchandise side of the club to flog off some new kits.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And it's good to get also that side with a bit more pedigree and quality up against us. You always want that going into the next season because obviously all of our fixtures up to this point have been sides lower down. It's good to kind of, as we always do, kind of start slow and then work our way into the bigger tests as we go on.
Yeah, that's what we always seem to do. We always start with lower down sides, mostly non-league, especially local sides. Obviously, we got Yeovil. Have we got Forest Green, or am I being stupid?
Yeah, we do. Forest Green
Yeah, we
away,
do.
isn't it?
Yeah. So we got teams like that in the National League, and we got even teams even lower down, like Yate and Salisbury. And then we always finish with that one, you know, team with pedigree. Obviously, Leicester's pedigree has fallen in recent years, but they're still, you know, they're a massive team. Realistically, they're probably, there's been some big teams that have gone down to League One in recent years, and they are up there with one of the biggest, especially in the last 10 years.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
um, it'll still be nice to see a team like Leicester come to the Mem, even if it isn't as nice as it would be 2 or 3 years ago. If this was a friendly 2 years ago, and I saw Leicester were coming to the Mem, oh my god, we got Leicester, that's class.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, Leicester, it's a decent friendly, but it could be better.
Yeah, they'll have some players with pedigree in there as well. That's kind of, I'm not sure kind of what they're looking like in terms of squad retention. I haven't kept up with it, but particularly last season, as much as they went down, they had a lot of big name players, a lot of recognizable players in that squad.
Yeah.
So there should hopefully be some decent turnouts, some decent names to see there if we do end up going to it.
And all of this for England to get to the semis and no one turns up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't
Anyway,
wait.
we're going to move on now to our final topic. This is the final topic this time. Obviously, the World Cup has already started. We're, I think, 6 days in now. It's going fast already. And England's first game is tomorrow against Croatia, 9 o'clock on ITV1, if you didn't know. Um, and there's two ex-Rovers players. I've done it again. There's two ex-Rovers players in the England squad for the first time in goodness knows how long. I think the last time that we had an ex-Rovers player in the squad, if you discount Elliot Anderson, who's been in the squad for a while, was Ricky Lambert, I think, in 2014.
Probably, yeah. In the England squad,
And
yeah, it would have been.
yeah, and I can't remember the last time we've ever seen ex-England players at a major tournament, let alone two. But we have this year. Elliot Anderson, of course, Nottingham Forest, very heavily rumoured to be going to Manchester City. I mean, he's going to start, isn't he? Let's be honest.
Yeah, he's got that spot nailed down now, which is
Yeah.
credit to him considering kind of relatively how little time he's been involved in the squad. He just played his way in straight away. You can tell Tuchel is such a big admirer of him. Yeah, he's been one of the best midfielders in the Premier League this season, kind of
Oh yeah,
undoubtedly, and he's earned that spot.
100%, 100%. I think the thing I've been impressed with by Elliot in the England setup is how comfortably he's adapted to it. Because, there's some players that play well at club level, and they're destined to earn a cap, and then they get in, and it takes them a while to play into the England setup. But you knew as soon as Elliot started kicking a ball in that first game that he played, I think it was a qualifier, I can't quite remember against who, but he just looked comfortable and, a part of the team, even though it was his first game and he kicked like one or two footballs in an England shirt. You could just tell that he was gonna, break into that team and, be a consistent, presence in that side. As it's turned out, I mean, he's gonna probably play alongside Rice in that midfield. And he's had a good impact for England, and I think that just shows the career trajectory is that he takes to everything that he does like a duck to water. Obviously, the Rovers spell. I mean, what a spell! We don't need to talk about that because we've banged on about that spell time and time and time and time and time again.
And we'll
He was
continue
so
to.
good. We will continue to, yeah. I think if anyone didn't know that online that Elliot Anderson had played for Rovers, the Rovers fans have hounded them into knowing about 16 times already.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he goes to Newcastle. Settles in there well. Obviously he didn't play much in his first season, but then he got that run in the second season, and he started to, really impress in the Premier League. He took like that. It took him a while, but when he got his opportunity, he took like that to a duck's water. Then he goes to Forest, one of their best players.
There
That's,
probably is their best. Well, it's him and Gibbs White, really, isn't it? They're
yeah,
kind of in a league of their own in that squad.
pretty much. And then he gets the call up by Tuchel into the England squad. Takes like that to duck to water. Everything he touches turns to gold. It's a cliche, but at the moment he can. I mean, obviously he doesn't have the best performance every game. He's human, but he seems like he can't really do any wrong at the moment.
Yeah, well, he's snatched a spot that was there to be fought for. It's kind of where we've struggled for a little while now, is kind of nailing down who's going to be that presence next to Declan Rice. Because you think
Yeah,
we started with kind of Calvin Phillips in that role. I know we kind of trialed dropping Jude Bellingham a little bit deeper, and then we at the last Euros moved on to, initially we had Conor Gallagher, and
yeah,
then moved that into more Kobbie Mainoo, who looked like he was going to be the one to stamp that down, and then obviously had all of his issues going forward from them with Ruben Amorim.
yeah,
But the opening has been there for a while, and he has just completely snatched that. Like instantly from the second he's came in, it's been his spot. It's looked like he was born to play there, which is kind of remarkable considering he has kind of played around. He's featured in a lot of different positions in a lot of different systems. So
yeah.
how naturally he has taken to it, like you said, the duck to water is just everything's felt so natural and so just right almost.
I think that's the most impressive thing about Elliot is how versatile he can be. Obviously, when he was with us, he was a lot more further advanced. At times, he felt like a winger. With
Yeah.
his forward play and obviously the goals, the assists. What can you say about that hasn't already been said? But now with England, with Forest, he's been able to adapt his game and to drop back into that role alongside Rice. He's and he plays like he's naturally played there all his career. Even though we know with Rovers, he's played a lot further forward at times. He can just He's anywhere in that midfield. He can versatile. He's versatile. He can play, and it looks like he's played there all his career. And I think that's the most impressive thing about Elliot for me.
Yeah, and it's also the fact that the role's almost flipped, because Declan Rice for a while was seen as though he was going to be the deeper of the two. So for
Mm.
that to now kind of pivot where he's almost the more advanced now, and
Yeah,
the role that we've required has almost changed, the fact that he's taken to that as well, which is almost more of a difference from the kind of player that he is, it is just kind of, you've got to give him credit for how easily he's able to kind of just switch between all of these
yeah,
different requirements.
absolutely. Obviously, we've said it so many, but that is a hallmark of an incredible player. Is someone who he's good enough as it is, but he's versatile. He can play multiple different positions when he's needed. He can fit into a system fantastically, and yet he still plays amazingly every single time. And
Yeah.
I mean, give Elliot 10 years. I mean, we were saying this with Rovers, even before obviously the success with Newcastle and Forest and the England. Give Elliot 10 years, and my goodness, what a career, what a player he could be.
Oh, 100%. He's like, everything is, it's almost impossible to go wrong, which I'm going to touch wood as I say that. But
I
it
don't have
feels
any
like
wood around me. Touch the sofa.
everything is just set up for it to just kind of grow on this exponential kind of curve upwards. he's special. We knew that. We know that more than anyone, how special he
Yeah,
is. And it's amazing to see him kind of putting that to practice now.
yeah, absolutely. And then the second player, who's ex-Rovers, who is in the England squad, Jarell Quansah, of course, was with us on loan in the second half of the 22-23 season. Centre back. I think he's been playing right back at times with Leverkusen, or am I being stupid?
Uh, well, he definitely has with England. I haven't really kept up with
Yeah,
Leverkusen, but with England, he
fair
definitely.
enough. I must say, obviously, he's a good player, and I'm not discounting him, but I am surprised he's made it as far as he has with how he was playing at Rovers. It's one of those that sort of feels like a bit of a surprise. If Elliot was sort of the nailed on out of the two, if you said to us, at the end of 2023, Elliot Anderson and Jarell Quansah are going to play at the next World Cup, I would have said Elliot, absolutely. Like there was no doubt in my mind that, well, that he would make it that far. But then Jarell, I would be thinking, how?
Yeah, no, their times at Rovers were kind of almost complete opposites.
Yeah,
Elliot Anderson was the point where he came in when we were struggling and completely flipped things on its head. Quansah came in at a time where we weren't exactly flying, but we weren't doing bad by any means. And again, things kind of completely flipped on their head,
yeah,
and we sank because
yeah.
he was kind of the replacement for Bobby
Bobby
Thomas almost
Thomas.
when he
Yeah,
came back. Who, I mean, gonna put that into the fold. Is that another potential future England player? I think he's somebody who's going to be in the Premier League very soon.
the way that they're
Done
going,
well for
yeah,
him. Well, it'll be in the Premier League next season if he stays at
he
Coventry.
will be. Yeah, if he stays at Coventry, yeah, he will be. I mean, it could happen. I mean, he's been incredible for Coventry this year, hasn't he?
Yeah, but yeah, no, Quansah is a weird one. We were kind of I've spoken about this before on here. I think that kind of how when he went back to Liverpool and had that pre-season, and his fans were talking him as like, "Oh, we found our next Van Dijk," and
Yeah, we were
we
thinking,
all
what
had
are
that
you
same
on?
reaction of, "Are we talking about the same player here?"
Yeah,
But
yeah,
no, you got to give him credit. He's done well for himself. I hear he's had a good season at Leverkusen, and he's got the rewards for it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you with what you were saying in pre-season when Liverpool fans were bigging him up like he was the next best thing. You were thinking, what are you on? I mean, obviously he wasn't terrible with Rovers, but he just felt decidedly average. And I think the
I
fact
think you're
that he's
putting it a bit
managed to
kind there. I'm going to be honest.
see, I know you don't rate him that highly from what he did at Rovers. I don't think he was terrible. He had some bad games, don't get me wrong. Portsmouth, at home, especially.
Yeah,
Morecambe, the 5-1. But I don't think he was terrible. I think he was just there, really. So for him to, go on and have the career that he's had, obviously he did very well at Liverpool, earned himself that, was it like £30 million move to Leverkusen, and he's settled in well there. You've got to give him credit because I didn't see, a route for him into Premier League football, let alone the England setup. So he's done well for himself.
yeah, he's done really, really well. And the likelihood is he's probably going to end up getting minutes now with Livramento dropping out early
Yeah, that
today.
is true.
He's
Yeah.
kind of now with Chalobah being the replacement who's not a right back. He's become kind of the automatic second choice now. So you'd like to think if we go into that final group game with nothing to play for, you're probably going to see him play in that.
Yeah. Which would be nice, to be fair, even though he didn't have the best spell here. It is always nice seeing ex-Rovers players do well. Obviously, Elliot is probably going to start from minute one against Croatia. I say probably. It would be a miracle if he doesn't. I mean, Tuchel's got a squad, hasn't he? And Elliot is part of it. Um, so and then obviously it would be nice to see Quansah get some minutes, but we'll see how that goes.
I've got a hot take around that. Who I don't know if I want to say this because I feel like I'm always going to get if there is anyone listening who's big into their England squads going to get flamed for this.
Right,
I think Elliot should be starting, but I don't think he should be starting next to Declan Rice. As in, I don't think
right.
Declan Rice should be starting.
Don't think Declan right. So who should be starting instead? Kobe Mainu.
Yes, I
I
think
thought
that's a
you'd
better
say
pick.
that.
I
I
think that's a
thought
better
you'd say
dynamic.
that. I can see it. I don't agree,
I think
but I
Rice is
can
the better
see it.
player, but I think those two are a better dynamic as a pair.
I think I can see where you're coming from because Tuchel does. It seems like a bit more of a system manager than Southgate, doesn't he? Tuchel likes his systems, his tactics, and he picks his teams around those. So I can see where you're coming from. I think if there would be no debate if it was Southgate, he picks based off of players, didn't he? Really,
Yeah,
and
oh yeah.
I'm not discrediting anything that Southgate did. He's well, he's by far the best manager we've ever seen in England so far in our lives.
Yeah.
But he would definitely pick.
Cole Palmer starting at left wing springs to mind in that
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. There were some odd tactical choices from Southgate. I can see where you're coming from, but I think Rice is just.
Oh no, for the record, it's not going to happen. I'm
No, I know
aware it's
it's
not going
not,
to
but
happen.
I get where you're coming from, but I just can't see it. Obviously it wouldn't happen anyway, but I wouldn't agree with it happening anyway. I'm not saying Mainoo's a terrible. Obviously I'm not, but I just think it makes sense to start Rice and Anderson together. But we'll see how the tournament progresses. Of course, first game tomorrow. I'm going to be seeing you for that, aren't I? We're
Yeah.
going to the pub for that one, so that'll be good.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that is it for episode 7 of Rovers Rambles. We've done quite well with time. We've managed to get an hour out of today, which I'm surprised by, but we've had a good one. Thank you for joining me again, Jaimie.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone who watched or listened this week. Of course, with it being the off season, we won't be doing episodes every week. So we won't be back until we've got enough Rovers news to do another episode. But we'll see you then.